All right, we're continuing all under control. I don't know how far I'm going to be able to get into this before it needs to be like censored beyond belief, but we're doing it. It's by Mr. Jimmy DeFloof. Stay here and everything will be clear soon. Well, sorry, last time I left before that line. But stay here now, and everything will be clear soon. All right, so we have two characters currently. There's Tiago. I think it's Tiago. And then there's Alex. And Tiago, he's a crybaby. And Alex, I don't know what's going on with Alex. He's just, I don't know, he's kind of weird. The story text told me to stay here, so I'm staying here. But I think what it actually wants me to do is to press space to move forward. Also, that's a very literal way. That was a very literal way of addressing the audience. But man, I wish I had never stayed. Where do we start? Where do we start? What was his voice? Well, first I need to tell you about a couple of friends. Thomas and Diego. Okay. This is chapter 2, Thomas and Diego. Where do we start? Well, first I need to tell you about a couple of friends. So I actually already knew someone living in... I don't know how to say that. Sao Paulo. Before I decided to come here. I don't know if I said that right. A gray wolf I'd known since high school who had moved here as a musician. It was funny looking back at how me and Thomas met. Back then I played drums in the school band, and we would sometimes just go to each other's houses for some games and music talk. I had this dream of playing in a rock band, and he wasn't half bad with the guitar. Years passed, and while I was the one who ended up working for a boring graphic design degree, he somehow managed to become a relatively successful musician on his own. I would read this all in Alex's voice, but I'm not doing that. But I do recognize Alex is the speaker. I'm not reading all of this in Alex's voice. Cute art. So when I was planning to study here, I thought, at least I already have someone to hang out with. We were both excited about the prospect. Adding to that, around the time I had already learned a great deal about myself and my sexuality. I wasn't the least bit scared coming out to him. In fact, I couldn't have hoped for a more positive outcome, since right afterwards he also came out to me as bi. We didn't have feelings for each other besides friendship, though, and that was fine. As a whole, it still felt like we had become closer than we had ever been. But then he said he was seeing someone. I was instantly curious regarding the lucky person. They were a man, and to my surprise, also a bear. Though black, not polar. The two of them were... I once again cannot read. The two of them were at the time taking steps to move into an apartment in Liberdade? Where are these places? Which got me into some mixed feelings. I love where I live, but... Interlagos? Are these real places? Are these real places? I know Sao Paulo is probably a real place. But Interlagos? What is Interlagos? That's not a name of a place. That's the name of some weird startup company. I love where I live, but Interlagos is too far away. I love where I live, but Interlagos is way too far away from the most interesting parts of Sao Paulo, if you ask me. And with no subway access to boot. Still, he assured me that we would still talk regularly, even if we couldn't hang out often. Lots of arts, lots of fun arts. And look, one thing I need to say right away is that Thomas liked to talk. A lot. To the point that, even if we weren't even sexually interested in each other, he had no shame in oversharing. A couple of drinks in, and he'd start openly talk and tease about sex and kinks. Ever since we were a teenager, it was just something that he did often. Maybe way too often. But I don't mean to say I found him annoying because of that. In fact, I actually had fun with that kind of thing. And it didn't take long for me to join in the horny talk myself. What kind of game is this? I thought this was a horror game. Hell, we even traded tips on sex toys, gay sex, preparing before bottoming, what lube to use, and all that stuff. So when he brought up the subject of a hypnosis kink, that didn't raise any flags at all to me. Honestly, it even sounded a tad funny. He was the last person I'd ever guess was into completely submitting himself. Thomas said he and his boyfriend, he had said his name was Diego, had quickly become obsessed with it. What is this plot? What's this story? What is this story about? He admitted he did feel silly at first, as a skeptic of mind control techniques. So when Diego swung a small pocket watch in front of him and read his script, he just played pretend until they were both excited enough they wouldn't have to kid themselves anymore. Meanwhile, I listened with a measured deal of interest. You know how it is. When a friend you love is genuinely into something, even if you're only tangentially there for what he's talking about, it is exciting just to hear. If a friend's joy radiates with glimmer, then his joy was a powerful lighthouse. What is this metaphor? Do I have to do a Thomas voice? Do I have to do a Thomas voice? Here, 1 second. All right, I think I can voice Thomas now. It's so fucking hot. Diego's a raw talent as a hypnotizer. Doesn't even feel like I'm pretending. Sure, it's easy to leave the trance when we have to. It's all about that in-the-moment feel, you get me? And I'd say, yeah, hell, you're almost getting me sold on trying it out myself. And he chuckled. Come visit sometime, Alex. Diego will make you do the dishes for us. Naked, while we just sit back and watch. But plans of visiting him for a test hypnosis session never really left our text logs or night outs. You know what happened. It was the early 2020. It was the early 2020. And by April, there were already lockdown attempts in most of Brazil. Is this set in Brazil? Is it set in Brazil? All right, so I didn't realize this was set in Brazil. I guess that makes more sense. I don't know why I thought this took place in California. All right, so Interlagos, that's a place in Brazil. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Sao Paulo got it fucking bad. And since I have a history of immunocompromised people in the family, I didn't want to risk catching the damn thing. This is a period piece. It's set post-pandemic. This takes place in the IRL universe. This takes place in IRL Earth. Okay. So every interaction with me and Thomas, is it Thomas or Thomas? Tomas? I think it's Tomas. So every interaction with me and Tomas around that time remained through text and voice call only. He would tell me about shows and games that were coming out, how he and Diego were working together on some music, and how he didn't have to worry much about money because his partner worked at home as a professor. Huh. And of course, he kept telling me how the hypnosis was going. There was a point where I actually felt my body moving on its own. Woofing. Wanting so bad. Woof. Annoying I couldn't do it until he told me to. What's this story about? And I said something like, does he make you purr like a cat when he snaps his fingers? Make you sleep on the count of 3? And a series of laughing emojis later, he responded, I'm not that far gone, trust me. But you know, I still think it'd be easy. I still think it'd be hotter if there really wasn't a way of fighting back. Seeing my body moving, doing things I'd be too scared to try. Fuck, it's just having a good time with barely any effort. Then I said, this framing is absurd. The framing of this narrative is absurd. because the story is being presented to us by Tiago, who is conveying this story to us actively in the past tense. But now he is relaying to us. He is relaying to us a scene that also happened further in the past that Alex is actively relaying to him, in which Alex is narrating and also relaying to us like his own thoughts and actions, but also the thoughts and actions of other people within this flashback. He is administering directly to Tiago. Then I said, I can see the appeal of that. Is it really that good? You bet. Last night he showed me the websites he goes to for hypnosis enthusiasts. Lots of helpful tips there. Voice intonation, how to write your own prompts, book recommendations, professional courses, how to set the mood. I don't know why I'm laughing so much. Then I sent something like, just be careful not to give them your bank account info. Surely they can't hypnotize you to do that. To which he responded in complete dismissal, which I totally expected. Yeah, Daddy, don't worry. We'll behave. I teased him for calling me that, and then we both dropped the subject as we kept teasing back and forth until we went to bed. In honesty, I was still happy for him, but after a while, things began to slow down. He would still eventually send a text or two after an intense session with his boyfriend, but our subjects frequently deviated to somewhere else, and the conversation would die on the spot. I'd stay like this until more or less the 3rd of 2021. That's when you and I began to talk, I think. And the lockdown policies were getting less severe, although I was still too anxious to go out. Stuff was getting a bit calmer in the country. COVID stress shrunk so that political stress could grow, with the president spitting atrocities on live TV. I was also starting to get used to how my life was going in the city. I got my graphics design degree, and back then I'd been getting enough as a freelance illustrator to keep this gay little apartment for myself for a while. Then sometime later, after 2 months of silence, I woke up to a text from Tomas. I didn't realize it had been that long since we last talked. Couple that with the fact that I was always someone who dreaded random texts out of the blue, I was feeling a bit scared. Not this gut feeling, like something was terribly wrong. Some kind of tragedy, as if his mom had suddenly got terribly sick or some friend passed away. Or perhaps it could be that he had broken up with his bear and was down both emotionally and financially. It felt silly jumping to conclusions like that. After all, he could have just sent something like, "Hey, how's it going, big guy? It's been a while," or something like that. Nervous as I was, I could only gather enough courage in me to actually check the message until it was nighttime, still expecting some bad shit. And yeah, I guess I was wrong. It wasn't just bad. It was way, way worse. What are you talking about? What are you on about? Okay, that was the flashback. Alex paused and I watched him turn to the kitchen. I'm from Rio de Janeiro, which is a city I was bound to leave behind at a certain point in life, given my disdain for both the sea and summer heat. But Sao Paulo is, as my mom would say, the city of drizzle. The real tipping point that got me to move is how cozy it felt during winter. Now, while the bear took a break for a glass of water and a couple more eye drops, I felt myself freezing to the goddamn spine. What? Why? The sky from the balcony window was sickly pale, like a uniform sheet of gray covering the whole city. That is pretty cozy. That is the ideal weather, right? Heavy blanket of clouds where you can't see the sun or the sky. That is ideal weather. Alex hadn't been blinking much during the story. He knew that I noticed that. Is that why he has the eye drops? Dude, this writing's so clever. That's why he has the eye drops, because he doesn't fucking blink. At the end of most sentences, he shut his eyes in obvious agony, wincing and baring his teeth. They were yellowish and thinned out on the irritated gums. He wasn't doing well at all mentally, that I already knew. What I didn't really expect was the places his story was going. Yeah, me neither. When he came back with the water, just briefly glancing at the lonely slice of pizza he had heated a few minutes back, he seemed eager to continue. As it turned out, this wasn't just as a vent, but as a necessity. A compulsion to get the rest of his statement out there. I could do nothing but listen. Every word he uttered carved in the back of my skull so I would never forget. I already told you I felt uneasy when the notification popped up. And when I saw it was an audio track, it was like a key turned inside of me. Is the plot of this evil hypnosis, right? The plot of this is evil hypnosis. It's like I don't know enough horror movies to make a reference to another piece of horror media. I don't watch horror things. I don't read horror things. Is this The Grudge? Is this The Grudge but Hypno Kink? Right? Is this The Grudge but Hypno Kink? I don't know what The Grudge is about. I never watched The Grudge. Anyway. I thought, okay, this is definitely serious. No. He sent Alex. Someone sent Alex some weird kink hypnosis some weird kink hypnosis stuff embedded in an audio file. And Alex, he's gonna I don't know what happens. Let's see what happens. I sat on the couch, made sure I was free of absolutely any other chores, and pressed play. Now, before I keep going, I need to reassure you. Everything I've been telling you is the truth. I'm not making any of this up. I still have the audio saved, and I can forward it to you later if you want, but I'd really rather not. There's something wrong with it? And, well, I could only form guesses as to what specifically after I went to his apartment. Alex sighed with deep regret. But now it's not the time. We'll get to that later. Hell, we need to. Now the audio went something like... He stood still for a moment. Then something seemed to shift within him. Alex assumed a completely different voice from his own. It was raspy, drawled, and deep. Do I have to do another new voice? A throat worn out from too many cigarettes and too little time, and which had known no true rest for way too long. Even his body language seemed to transform as he assumed a slightly contorted posture on his back. His eyes were no longer at me or at any corner of the apartment, but looking directly through me to a point beyond space itself. Then he started. 1 second. Alright, we're gonna try this again.
Hey, big guy. I know it's been a while since we last talked. Crazy times these days, eh?
He laughed, the noise of a morbid ghoul.
I wish I could tell you things were fine, but they're really not. Fucking far from it, you won't even believe it. I don't even know how to start. Dropping the bomb right now. Diego is gone. Not like he abandoned me or we broke up kind of way. He's dead. Dead, plain and simple. And as to how, well, he was into something bad and something dark.
His voice crackled as his breathing became heavier.
I need you to come. Please, I need to talk to someone. I can't do this through the phone. It's just so much. Way too much for me to handle on my own. Please. I'll be waiting for a response. Please don't leave me.
Wasn't expecting him to be so desperate there. He was shaking when he was finished. At some point in the middle of his retelling, Alex almost started to cry. Back then, I guess it was just justifiable for him to feel that way, but I couldn't shake that it was still some... I couldn't shake that was still part of some kind of act. It didn't feel right at all. It's making me feel uncomfortable, but I couldn't simply tell him to stop. Also, before I forget, there's like a yin-yang symbol here. But there's the dark and the There's the dark and the lightness, right? There's the dark and the lightness. But there's no light in the darkness. There's just the ridges. What's the deal with that? What's the deal with the corrupted yin-yang? Something had irrevocably captivated me beyond objections. Then, when the act was over, it was as if a shadow had lifted from the entire room. Yeah, was the lighting darkening? Was that diegetic? Was the dark lighting diegetic? It's funny that this is happening at like 10 in the morning and not like 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. at night. He's back to himself, staring at me with those terrified, unblinking eyes.
Sorry, I need a moment.
I just nodded. He got up for more water and then sat at the table next to his cold food, silverware clinking loudly while he cut the slice of pizza into smaller bits. I sat next to him. Why does it keep doing this? Why does it keep doing this? Just start the next line.
The first shock to me was his voice. It sounded tired, yes, but that wasn't everything. I don't know how to describe it in any other way, but I swear I could hear some kind of whisper behind every pause, between every word. Like there was someone else talking. And it wasn't just an impression either, it was knitted.
What is knitted? I've never seen that word. New word discovered. Knitted. New word.
At first I thought it could have been the TV, but that would still sound somewhat distorted, wouldn't it? And there's more. Whatever that other voice was speaking, it wasn't Portuguese, it wasn't English, it wasn't like any language I ever heard. And yet, deep in my head, I could almost understand the intent behind it, being directly transferred to my subconsciousness. Right. We're just straight up cosmic eldritch horror now, aren't we? Like thoughts forming in my brain without me even having the effort to think them. Like hypnosis. I felt compulsion inside my mind. Thomas was calling me to his home. How could I refuse it? It was impossible. I didn't even send a text. I decided to visit him the very next morning.
Pause for your thoughts. Now, first of all, I already mentioned how unsettling Alex's reenactment felt to me. But there was another layer to it, which I felt like really elevated it. This could just be me misremembering things, or posterior events reshaping them in hindsight. But as he was speaking, I remember also noticing some kind of whispering between his words as well. I didn't know what it was, and I wasn't about to start theorizing right away. Right. So, right, I'm not going to state the obvious, right? Right? Alex go to guy apartment. Tiago go to Alex apartment. As soon as it was over, I felt a wave of nausea spread through my body, then a slight headache, and then nothing else. Alex continued his story. It's an incantation. Your new background. Condominio Residencial Mikami. I didn't even send a text. I decided to visit him the very next morning. What I'm about to tell you is both a recollection of everything I saw that day and a few more details I only learned about during the time that followed. I'll try to be brief, because after I got there, we literally spent an entire afternoon just talking. Sometimes over repeated topics, and other times over stuff I've never really managed to make much sense of. Now, you already know I don't like going out much. Besides COVID anxiety, the distance from the rest of the city always felt discouraging in many ways. I also never got to learn bus routes, and since I earned enough anyway, an Uber every now and then never hurt. I always wish I had made more effort to visit friends more often after I got vaccinated. But like the Los Hermanos... But like that Los Hermanos song says, Leaving home is already going on an adventure. Los hermanos. The men? I don't know Spanish. No, that's Portuguese. Anyway, my brain wouldn't let that cursed ditch go away. It spoke louder than anything else, and while normally I'd welcome any reason to leave my apartment, this time it felt like I was walking into an early grave. Like my survival instinct was screaming. I was momentarily deaf to it. Nothing would stop me. Thomas's apartment? Thomas? I don't know. Thomas's apartment complex was beautiful, small and filled with gardens and hedges around a couple of gazebos of Greco-Roman art style. Art cop. I stared at them at the reception while the guard at the lookout phoned the wolf. During the Uber ride, I'd passed by a shopping mall just a few blocks away, followed by a family-owned French restaurant and a small cafe and a bookstore around the corner. Why are you telling us this retroactively? Right? Why are you telling us this retroactively? Then I looked outside and noticed a little pharmacy and a convenience store just a few paces across the sidewalk. That was a cozy location, and when they let me in, I took my time just looking around the complex. I always felt a bit class conscious when visiting such places. I didn't know how much Diego made a month, but if he could afford a place like that, I think he and Thomas were living a dream. Do not read all the Portuguese text. Em caso de incendio usa escada. I assume that says, in case of fire, use escape. Use this fire escape in case of fire. I don't know what that says. Saiba. What is the layout of this hallway? So you have 64 here, then there's a bathroom, then there's a fire escape, then there's room 65. Like, what's it counting from? Is it counting down to 64, like behind here? Anyway, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, even after I got to his floor. Walking into the hallway, there was the scent of someone's mid-afternoon coffee from one of the rooms. And then the muffled beats of music from another one. Like Anna Carolina singing about how much she liked roses. Carolina? And then some muffled action movie sounds from the other one right after. Why was I so afraid there'd be anything unusual? Even if the audio had creeped me out a bit, it looked like this was going to be just another visit. We'd sit down, vent for a while, watch something, order a burger, and then I'd sleep on the couch just to keep him company overnight. Order a burger? People out here ordering burgers? What the heck? There's another pause. I got to his door and all my expectations shattered. Like a prick on the back of the neck or a sudden chill you're only supposed to feel in moments of near death. There was an aura of uncanny foulness beyond that door, even if it looked barely discernible from all others. Thomas didn't like decorating it much, but besides the Pride welcome rug. The Pride welcome rug? Oh, it's like Pride flag. Welcome rug. Okay. But there are some things that seem to go beyond what they look like. Our eyes cannot see it, but something else inside us can feel its presence and its repulsiveness. I turned the knob. He knew I was coming, so the door hadn't been locked. It's so decrepit. When I walked in, a warm cloud of rot and decay was the first thing to greet me. It was too dark. Does this guy have a landlord? It was too dark and way too cold for a wolf. What do you mean way too cold for a wolf? Do you know what a wolf is? The dishes and cups piled in the sink like a porcelain castle, and so did the dirty clothes on top of the dining table. I like how the jump scare is just how horrifically disgusting this room is. Why is the wallpaper peeling off the walls? The walls appear to sweat out a dark gooey substance. How? And the smell. God, the smell. I could feel the filth in the air. It felt heavy to walk in there, like a dull knife slicing through burnt steak. Anyway, I don't know why that metaphor makes me laugh. Actually, it's not a metaphor, it's a simile. Like string to see in the dark. It was a warning, one I should have listened to before I noticed Thomas's frail figure emerging from his bedroom.
Bear.
I had to do the Thomas voice again. Tomas? He murmured. I couldn't see more than a blurry shape in the dark, but it was obvious he was trembling, leaning against the wall with barely any strength on his legs. Why?
I'm sorry for calling you. I really am.
I shivered.
Thomas, what is all this?
He didn't respond right away, and during that silence, I heard that weird thing again. Whispers coming from nowhere that I could trace.
You'd better sit. We're gonna be here for a while. I'm sorry I can't offer anything to drink. I know you love coffee as much as I do, or did. Oh, Alex. I couldn't go for a day without at least 2 cups. Now it's been so long, I don't even remember the taste.
He chuckled at that. It was a drawled, terminal kind of chuckle with rusty vocal cords. I sat at the dinner table on the only chair I could see that didn't have anything on it, be it clothes or paper wraps from takeout orders. Then he left his spot, and his eyes adjusted well enough that I could see him. He was... how can I even put it? How do you turn gray? How do you turn gray? I guess you almost turn gray if they're not healthy, sometimes. Not really, that doesn't happen. No, that's not a real thing. He was... how can I even put it? At least that moment, I remember the phrase, thinner than death, came on a whim and stuck with me. I saw his skin stretching over the bones, for it seemed to have fallen from most of his torso, while a bunch of scars decorated him side to side. His face didn't seem much better. The unkempt tufts along his jawline pointed in all directions, and both his ears had been nicked at the base. Why? How? His left ear in specific was missing a good chunk of the tip. Fucking hell, I thought, feeling as if I'm in front of a car wreck. Had Diego done all that to him? If so, I didn't have any idea until that day. Then I noticed his eyes, or rather, I noticed that I couldn't find them. It's usually so easy to see wolf eyes in the dark due to how much they reflect, but his was covered under a sleep mask.
It only started a few months ago. I guess you could say we got a bit too excited with some things.
What happened? What could have possibly happened? What could have possibly happened? What about Hypno-King could have led to this? To any capacity.
You must have noticed at some point I stopped messaging you about it.
It's not because... wrong form of its. This is possessive its. We need a contractual its. I'm just kidding. Am I? I don't know. I think that's right.
It's not because I suddenly got shy or thought I was bothering you. Things really got out of control.
Do they have the same voice? I mean, I accidentally gave them the same voice, but I'm not going back and fixing it. And then he told me everything very slowly, like he had been rehearsing all of this for a while. I think it took him more than an hour to finish, but at the time, it felt like just a few minutes. It's funny how often the narrative tells us the same thing. Like, Alex told us this. He told us this already. Right? Okay, like, he told us what happened, but now he's telling us what happened in further detail, which I guess makes sense, but is still, like, incessantly redundant. It took him more than an hour to finish it, but at the time it just felt like a few minutes. Understood why he had to take his time. Some horrors, especially the ones that dig deep inside you, require patience. You need to dissect them in order to rip off those roots and repair these rotten foundations. When does part 2 end? When does part 3 start? I assume part 2 is going to end with, like, the end of this flashback, and then part 3 is going to start with, freaky, wacky stuff happening in Alex's apartment. That's what part 3 is going to be about. You need to dissect them in order to rip off those roots and repair these rotten foundations. It's like surgery of the mind. Very poetic. Who is talking? Is this still Alex talking? Are we going into like? Are we changing narrators again? I don't think so. I think it's still Alex. Thomas and Diego were into hypnosis. For a long time, I assumed it was just play pretend on both parts. You can actually make someone do things they'd never do, right? But at a certain point, Thomas told me he really wanted to test that limit for a change. Paradoxical, right? Willing himself to do things unwillingly. I didn't think it would work, and at first, really didn't. At least, not as well as he had hoped. To give one example, if Diego was into water sports, Thomas was not. One night, Thomas wanted Diego to hypnotize him into drinking his own piss, which only resulted in the wolf vomiting all over the floor just seconds during the trance. That went on to other kinks he said he would never try, and others that neither of them were even into. It was like a test of how far they could push that fantasy. Of course, though, Diego would sometimes try to push back. This isn't what hypnosis is about, he'd say, to absolutely no avail. Thomas wouldn't give up. They both kept going into more extremes, looking here and there for different methods of induction. And then they found an ancient Cthulhu artifact on the dark web. Then something changed. Jump scare. Something sinister had invited itself into their play, and much to their dismay, would give them exactly what they had been seeking. One night, Thomas saw that Diego had pulled an all-nighter on his computer. He never did that. A man's commitment to his schedule is the golden badge of a passionate soul, he would sometimes remark. I'm not manifesting a Diego voice unless I have to. Thomas saw him bathed in the blue light of his monitor, eyes wide open, grinning to himself. When the bear noticed he was being watched, he closed the window he was looking at and chuckled. I got something for us, all right, he teased. Just you wait. Said and done. 3 days later, still with that same grin imprinted on his face, Diego left the apartment for a couple of hours to meet with a local friend. When he returned, it was with an even wider smile. And a thick leather-bound tome, cradled in his arms like a newborn pup. I was joking. I was joking about the Cthulhu artifact thing. Thomas didn't say what kind of book it was. It's the Hypnonomicon. Thomas didn't say what kind of book it was. Wouldn't even name the author when I asked. It said it was some weird Arab name he couldn't pronounce. Then he said, when you walked in with that damn tome, I swear I could see the walls bend and contort to make way to the new shades of darkness I never knew existed. Wow, how poetic. How poetic and eloquent of Thomas to say. This is the answer, Diego had said. The answer to everything we've been looking for. Power and control. Is this control? Is this control? Is this the Alan Wake? Is this the Alan Wake spin-off game? Thomas mentioned how Diego's paws rubbed over the leather cover with intimate delicacy. He looked terribly eager to open it. You should prepare yourself, he continued. Just give me some time. I swear this will be good. Thomas didn't question it. Why would you? Why would you not question that? See, you want to feel bad. You want to feel bad for characters in horror stories, but then they just go along with the most absurd nonsense. A few minutes later, he showed up in the bedroom, completely naked and already semi-hard, smiling and panting while Diego's eyes were glued to that book's pages. Diego then got up from the bed, placed the book on the shelf, and was ready to start their game. Is this sex? Is this a sex thing? Is this a sex warning? Sex game? When he had described what had happened then, he was very specific to note how the bear seemed to move like a puppet. Like he was hovering, bloodshot eyes locked on a distant place, the immutable grin of his showing bright rows of sharp teeth. Then it began. Every noise from the outside, be it traffic or neighbors, was snuffed out. Diego's maw opened only by a sliver, and from the depths of his throat rose a dissonant chant. Thomas mentioned those damn whispers, somehow coming through between his words. They entered his ears like threads, wrapping tight knots on his brain, and made their spell take effect. The wolf suddenly couldn't move. He couldn't even turn his eyes away, yet there wasn't even a trace of fear. Why would there be? That loss of control was what he'd been wanting all along. The excitement was enough to drown all reason. See, guys, that's why it's called all under control. It's actually a reference to the meta-narrative. The meta-narrative. On your knees, Diego said. Make sure to spread those legs for me, pupper. Okay, I think this is just smut now. I don't know if he really used that word. Thomas said it sounded like pupper, but it also could have been puppet. How mysterious. Anyway, when he heard the command, he said he didn't even feel it as his knees bent down to the floor tiles. He spread his thighs apart,
Woof.
twitching and dripping while he panted. Then we were called whimpering, practically begging for the next command. Raise your paw to me, the bear said. The wolf's arm was lighter than air. Stretch those fingers, he instructed. And as if invisible cords tugged hard on his claw tips. Now be an obedient pupper and do as I say. Don't hesitate. Don't disobey. Don't even think of disobeying. I want you to grab your woofs and squeeze them hard. At that moment, Thomas actually felt some fear. He wasn't into CBT. He didn't even suggest that to Diego before. He imagined the pain it could cause to someone unexperienced was enough to make it a bit off limits. Yet he had to obey. How much of the rest of his narrative is going to be kink sex? There was nothing he could do about it. It was as if the muscles that controlled each movement had a mind of their own, guiding him towards the objective. Thomas was panting, watching it all incredulously, actually moaning for a split second in hesitation. Then his paw closed on his woofs, and true to his word, it squeezed them. Thomas gasped, almost yelped. Quiet, Diego snapped. And then he couldn't utter a noise. The wolf could only bare his teeth, and tears trickled down his face. His paw kept on squeezing like he was trying to get the juice from lemons. The pain was everywhere, no matter how much he tried to deviate his thoughts. A supernova of intensity burst from his groin, fogging all his senses. He didn't even feel it. He didn't even feel it when his
woof
burst out long, massive strings of his.
Woof.
The pain was too nauseating. He wanted to stop and take his paw away and lie down on the floor, but his body wouldn't let him. I want to stop reading, but I don't want to stop reading until we get to like a checkpoint. But there's no checkpoint here. There's just, not unless he was commanded to. Paws up, Diego ordered, and both of the wolf's paws rose in a second. The cloud of pain took a long time to disperse, and it still throbbed and hissed like a boiling pot. Thomas's muzzle didn't move. He refused to look down at the source of that fire. The bear taunted him. You did a good job there, boy, but don't think this is going to get you any favors. You wanted me to take control? I'll fucking take it. All of it. You won't touch yourself, and you won't rest. You'll stay on your knees, paws up in the air, and you will only move when you
Woof.
again without any sort of external stimulation. Diego licked his fangs. Thomas could see him hard under his pants. He could even smell the excitement through the fabric, but the bear seemed to be indifferent to his own arousal. He was once again glancing at the strange book on the shelf. Diego then grabbed something else from it, which Thomas hadn't noticed before. A long, sharp pair of scissors. The wolf trembled, trying once again to stretch his legs. The bear wouldn't do that, would he? No fucking way. Diego was into that kind of sadism. Not the bear that fell ill at the mere sight of blood. Thomas's heart raced as the man came closer. All semblances of pleasure has been replaced with primordial fear. And even after the cold steel closed on his ear tip. Okay, I thought that was going to be something a lot worse. Anyway, and even after the cold steel closed on his ear tip, he didn't whimper, didn't gasp, didn't even change his breathing as warm blood trickled down his neck. God damn, you're speedy as it gets. Diego threw his scissors to the corner and left the room. Thomas remained there on his knees and in the cold for who knows how many hours. He He tried to make himself
Woof.
tried to whine and whimper for Diego to come back and lift that freaky spell. He pissed on that spot, urine mixing with blood from his ear. Absolutely disgusting and abhorrent. Mr. Authorson. Mr. Authorson, do you like this? How much of this is fun for you, Mr. Authorson? He was hungry. Even when his arms began to feel numb, he still couldn't bring them down. Then eventually the compulsion seemed to die. His arms collapsed and so did his body on the cold floor. Oh, his body collapsed. His body didn't die. Okay. Diego was a little surprised, but not disappointed. Not completely, at least. They would try again later. His new techniques needed perfection. Even Thomas knew that. The experience was disturbing, but when he recovered, he could hardly believe how intense it felt. It was like he was under another compulsion. He was terrified, and yet part of him wanted more. Another pause. They played like that every day. Every day? They did that every day? Are you sure? Right. I feel like at a certain point, whatever, sure, why not? Why not? See, this is why I hate submissive people. This is why I hate submissive people. Because submissive people, they lack will, They just let themselves be, dominated, right? They let themselves be dominated, literally and figuratively, Well, it sort of depends, Some people are submissive in the bedroom, but, not outside of the bedroom. But some people are, so submissive that they are submissive in, every aspect of their life, right? You could walk up to them and be like, hey, man, I need $15. Can you give me $15? I don't know why I chose $15. $20 is a more realistic amount. But, you could walk up to them and be like, hey, man, I need $15. I don't have time for any questions. Can you just give me $15? Right, and then they'll just, fork $15 over to you, Right, without the question asked, They'll be like, oh, yes, Mr. Sir, here's $15 for you. Some people are too submissive. Being submissive in the bedroom is one thing, but some people are so submissive, just inherently, that they're submissive in the bedroom, but they're submissive outside of the bedroom as well. They're submissive in their own lives. They have no will. They have no temperance. Sometimes those trances were tests of endurance. Other times Diego only wanted to draw blood, just to see how far his control could reach. It seems like it reaches pretty far, dude. I don't know. Multiple times he ordered the wolf to hold his breath until he lost consciousness. He compelled the wolf to pluck out his whiskers one by one. He ordered the wolf to claw at his own... I don't... Okay, so there's periods in between these where Thomas has control over himself again, right? Why would you not just leave? Why wouldn't you leave? Whatever. He ordered the wolf to claw at his own skin slowly and deeply, and then woof, using his own blood as lubricant. That's so somehow, despite all of that imagery is the most uncalled for thing so far. Each time he commanded him, the words came out sharper. Persuasion was an art, and as such, it can only reach its pinnacle after extensive practice. Repetition is an executioner's brimstone. Okay, 100 nights of practice, 100 scars of deep cuts, 1,000 more cups of blood, and Thomas could never protest. He couldn't give up his original desire to have his choices stripped away. They didn't even think of a safe word, and why would they? Somehow he was fine with that, even after he stopped feeling any sexual pleasure from their sessions. They would just continue, even if there was no specific reason for it. How does Diego die? Thomas had become less of a person, more like a doll. Another pause. I wish I could say it was something as straightforward as some emotional manipulation that kept Thomas going through that cycle of self-harm in order to please his boyfriend. Or maybe it was simply that desperate to pursue his darker urges. But by now there was something more sinister going on. No, all this talk about whispers coming from nowhere and our perception of space shifting around us wasn't just imagination. and if they actually were tricks of the mind, and we're all just hoping to find a supernatural explanation for the pent-up anxiety nurtured through years of lockdown, then we were all buying into that collective insanity. I have no idea what I just read, I was just reading it. That was a really long sentence. We were already prone to seeing ghosts, alright, but that was something else. And it all started, as Thomas pointed out, with that stupid book, one which Diego referred to as an obscure hypnosis guide, but looked more like some sort of ancient esoteric text. What is happening? What is happening? What is the Tomas voice?
Azathoth, Kadith, Haster, Galskar. What do these names sound like to you? Would you have found more of those? I would have found more of those, but when Diego saw me looking at those pages, he shouted at me to leave it alone, and never to open it again. Then he said I needed punishment, and I knew in my heart it would be a painful one. Oh God, I knew it would be. Oh God, oh God.
He shuddered and began to sob on the spot.
He changed real bad. No, you need to believe me. Diego was never like that before he brought that damn thing home. He winced if I was even slightly hurt, and if I raised my voice just a bit, he would go on to apologize so much that it would get annoying. He used to be gentle. Then, I don't know. I just don't know. I guess I pushed him too hard.
I tried to remark that it was bullshit. He wasn't supposed to blame himself for any of that. But he dismissed whatever I had to say.
Maybe that's right. None of this is our fault. We all heard the whispers, after all. Hell, you must have heard them by now, right? I guess I'm having a hard time accepting something else.
What the heck? This story's like really narrative. This story is really meta. Okay, because Thomas is recounting this to Alex, and Alex is recounting this to Tiago, but Tiago is recounting it to us, the reader. So that's funny. I don't know if it's supposed to be that meta, but if it's supposed to be that meta, and that ends up becoming relevant, like with the conclusion of this story, it's actually pretty crazy. Guess I'm just having a hard time accepting something else was involved, but at the same time, I can't completely deny it. It wasn't just me who was suffering, waking up every morning with cuts all over my body, joints grinding excruciatingly whenever I moved them. And all those nightmares and night terrors every night. He was also paying the price. That grin on his face, his bloodshot eyes, like deep red orbs. And he got so thin, he didn't even look like a bear. A badger. Neither of us were our true selves anymore. Something had lodged itself in our heads, moving our bodies, guiding our desires. There was another me in my brain. But it wasn't me. It was Kara. It was Kara. It was Samuel Ayers. It was Kara. It was Samuel Ayers. It was a parasite feeding on me and my boyfriend. And neither of us could make it go away. It just kept going, day after day, week after week. Then, I think we both started to see things. The shadows on the wall warped more of the space around them, and they began to take form. They created eyes where they weren't supposed to. And the whispers. Fuck. I can still hear them, clear as day. Thomas stopped, gasping for air. We're almost done. After a while, the foundations were cracking, but there was one day when things finally started to crumble. He went on to describe what had happened the day he sent me the audio. Was that not today? Whatever. That afternoon, Diego ordered him to their bedroom like usual. He looked weak, legs not even bending all the way when he walked. His teeth in that perpetual smile looked yellow and frail. Oh, and earlier Tiago said Alex's smile looked like it was carved out of Play-Doh. You'll do what I tell you to, no hesitation. He started as he usually did, but something was different. Thomas could feel it. The whispers were louder, the shapes on the walls looked more defined. What's it called? Non-Euclidean architecture? The cycle is almost done. Open your eyes, keep them open. Thomas obeyed. Even when the discomfort started, his eyelids wouldn't twitch. He couldn't even blink. You will see, Diego continued, as his paw reached down to his woof. It was a mutilated thing, red and inflamed with multiple rashes around the woof. This is awful. This is disgusting. The bear woofed himself vigorously as he spoke. His breathing was labored. Why aren't they allowed to eat? Why aren't they allowed to eat? Or are they, like, skinny and frail and shit because this, like, eldritch entity is, like, feeding on their life force or whatever? I don't know. Woofed himself vigorously as he spoke. His breathing was labored. You will see. And he started to shake. Thomas felt like he was supposed to do something, but his body was already locked in the trance. The bear continued to woof. His unkept claws slicing through his woof. Okay. Is this fun for Mr. Author? Is this fun? Author-san? Do you like this? Drool began to drip from the maw. Slowly at first, then on long strings as his convulsion became more severe. You will see. You will see. You will. Then Diego stopped. His entire body suddenly got stiff before unceremoniously collapsing on the floor. Thomas was free to move again, but there was nothing more to be done. He looked at the bear's body splayed out on the floor and knew he was dead. Why? What is this? This is awful. Like, not in terms of quality, but just in terms of, like, concept. Right? Did this character just die by masturbating furiously and then just whatever? Then came the other realization. Thomas still could not blink. He turned from side to side, tried to pull his eyelids down. Oh, it's like how Alex could not blink. He turned from side to side, tried to pull his eyelids down, but something kept stopping him. He could not blink. Seconds passed, then minutes, then finally hours that felt like entire days. Maybe you don't get the full scope of the agony yet, but if you try to keep your eyes open for more than a minute, and you'll immediately feel burning discomfort arise. In just the first hour, Thomas growled, thrashed, and clawed at his own face. Oh, that's why he has the sleep mask. Oh. Is that... Did they say that Alex had a sleep mask too? Huh. He could not close his eyes. Why is that part of it? Why is part of the Hypno King curse that you can't close your eyes? And wherever he looked, the shadows were there, with their mesmerizing chant. But now there was another among them, a large grinning bear standing in the corner, laughing at him as he rubbed his... woof. Diego was among the ghosts. Is this like an ancient curse? I wanted to scream, but that was also not something I could manage. Oh yeah, the voice. At least not yet. Had to call someone first. That's when I understood the urgency of his call. Diego hadn't been dead for weeks, as I had previously assumed. When I realized he had died the actual day before I visited, I remembered the putrid smell coming from the rest of the apartment. Thomas, we need to get you out of here. It's over. Whatever you two had, whatever influence he had on you. We can get you treatment. They can fix your eyes. No, Alex! You should get out if you... Why did you bring him here? Why did you bring him here? Whatever. You should get out if you know what's good for you. But you... Is this the Diego voice? I don't have a Diego voice. My Diego voice was just my voice. But Tiago's voice is also just my voice. So it comes full circle. But you won't. Then he laughed, and something in that laugh managed to dig deep inside my heart. I immediately knew I was under his spell. My body was stuck to the chair. So, Okay, no, that wasn't Diego's voice. That was just Thomas's voice. Just before, whenever it was in italics, I mean, it was someone else speaking. But I think this is still Thomas's voice, probably. No, it would make sense for it to be Diego's voice. Because whenever Alex was speaking, he was speaking with Thomas's voice. Which means if Thomas is speaking now, he would be speaking with Diego's voice. But then Diego would have been speaking with someone else's voice entirely. But this text isn't in italics. I guess the last text was just in italics for emphasis. I don't know what voice to do here. I'm just going to do Thomas's voice.
You can't do that, can you?
I didn't answer. He slammed the paw on the table. Oh, fuck. That was loud. This is aggressive. Okay, like, this text is written not with a speaker. But obviously it's not Alex talking. And I'm taking a lot of the emotion out of this with not really knowing how to read it, but can you? And I damn near cried. I can't.
That is right. You can't deny me. Nobody ever could.
I'm not prepared to do Alex. I'm not prepared to do desperate Alex voice after doing the heckin' Tomas voice for 5 hours. What is Alex's voice?
God, please, someone help.
What is hark?
Hark.
He slammed the paws on the table again, and I stopped cold. All my thoughts seemed to have funneled into him.
You don't have a choice. Such is the nature. We were puppets, and our strings entangled the moment we stumbled upon the knowledge that we don't control them. We ate from the bread the devil had smashed. We drank from the goblet of rotten depths, black and bitter as it was to us all. And now we share the truth, that we were never in control.
Dynamite? Dr. Darling? The whispers around us grew louder, and for a moment I actually jumped in my seat. The shapes. I could actually see them moving in that dark apartment. In the corner of the living room, I could see a tall black bear staring straight at me. And, fuck, it was even more hideous than he had described. Like his shape was stretched into space he wasn't meant to inhabit. The shapes around us chanted in unison. Then Thomas sprung up quickly and came closer to me. His paw struggled to take off the sleep mask.
I see them. Even with this mask on, I see them.
Okay, so this is Thomas talking. He threw the sleep mask on the floor and I saw his eyes. 2 blood-red rubies protruding from his skull and was jumping out of their sockets, crying scarlet tears. He reached for the eye drops, but his paw trembled too much to hold it. It fell between his fingers and he cried.
I cannot close my eyes. It hurts. It hurts so much.
At that point, I saw other people coming inside the room. Neither of us had locked the door. Thomas's neighbor, who up until that point hadn't realized the nightmare that had been happening inside that apartment, stopped at the doorway to see a semi-naked wolf clawing at his own face. Blood sprayed the walls while the other tenants screamed in terror.
I can see.
His claws came closer to his eyes. Then without hesitating, he thrusted them in with full force, burying his whole fingers inside. That's like earlier when Tiago saw Alex sleeping, he said it looked like... God, I can still remember the squishy sound it made. He must have slid his fingers as far as they could possibly go. Hell, he wouldn't stop until he scooped his king brains out. Thomas moaned in agony.
I can still see them. I can still see.
I wanted to turn my head away, but something held it in place. And even as a whole minute passed, I could do nothing but watch. Some of the residents were running away from the scene, calling for help, while others were throwing up and fainting by the doorway. Then Thomas stopped, standing on a pool of his own blood, Paul still trying to force his way into his skull. He turned around and ran face first to the glass screen that led to his balcony. Okay. Another pause. The sound of his chattering finally shook me out of my trance, and the last I saw of Thomas was him flinging his body over the railing, plummeting to the end of his suffering. Why didn't you do that earlier? Whatever. I guess part of the compulsion is that you have to, like, pass it on to someone else. Right, you can't not pass it on to someone else. Part of the compulsion is passing it on. I felt cold during, yeah, right. Now we cut back to the present, or the present past as detailed by Tiago. Hey, now I don't have to do the heckin' Thomas voice anymore. Was that hurting my throat? Sometimes. I wasn't really doing it properly the whole time. But I do have a strain in my throat from that. I felt cold during Alex's final remarks. Do I remember how to do Alex's voice? Maybe. He didn't sound relieved at all, but rather the opposite. He was shaking, claws digging on his knuckles as he twitched his head to the side every few minutes. God, it was an awful tale. No wonder he had been so on the edge all this time.
That was last month. I was still in the chair when the police arrived. They found Diego's body in the bedroom. His cause of death, heart attack.
Are they sure?
And as for Thomas, well, it was obvious to all the witnesses that it had been suicide. He had lost his lover, had evidence of self-harm all over his body, and the filth that was the apartment showed the signs of severe decline in his mental health. You can read all that in the news if you look up Mikami Apartments right now. They also didn't find any haunted book about hypnosis. And all this nonsense about ghosts and entities. I still don't rule out that it was all some kind of hallucination they both made up to continue with their extreme way of exploring each other's kinks.
So Alex doesn't even realize what happened, right? Alex doesn't even realize what happened. Alex doesn't even realize the metaphorical, the metaphorical, corrupted, eldritch, blasphemous seed that's been implanted into him, or I'm assuming has, right? But that's not what you think. He rubbed his eyes and sighed.
Nope. If you were there, you'd agree with me.
I see. Look, I never would have guessed you'd witnessed something like that. That would have given me nightmares for days too.
Nightmares?
Alex shook his head.
We'll get there all right, but we still got some ground to cover.
When does part 2 end? Dude, you don't have to push yourself. I get it. I really do.
It's not just about what I saw or how the event stuck with me. They sure did, yeah. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to recall them in such vivid detail. I'm talking about something else. And before you say it, these are not signs of PTSD. I don't even know if I could tell this to a therapist and not sound insane.
You couldn't tell any of this to anybody without sounding insane, Alex.
But I'm telling you, fuck. I have to tell someone. I have to.
I shrugged. I already listened to the worst parts of the story, hadn't I? Let him at least give me the epilogue. Go on, then. He replied with a question.
Do you think there could be a mental virus of sorts?
Don't address the horror so literally. Don't address the horror so literally. I didn't think too hard on the question and just shook my head timidly.
I've been thinking a lot about curses lately. Kept thinking of the way Thomas compared his compulsion to a parasite, feeding on his mind and controlling his actions. All because he had listened to some sort of occult incantation. Although, you see, it might not have been the words exactly that opened that door, but rather the one thing we both kept hearing. Those whispers coming from nowhere. It only got worse after I got back home. The nightmares, the stress, the absolute horror of it all. Absolute horror!
What is humph?
Humph. Now you know why I kept postponing your visits lately. I was expecting things to improve, but they didn't. Hell, they didn't even remain static. If it was just nightmares, I could learn to live with that. But then, I started to hear them everywhere. Shit, I started fucking hearing them. The fucking whispers coming from everywhere. something like gibberish playing backwards. At first, they'd only be there for a few seconds, then minutes, then... He rubbed his head. He looked as if he was about to start crying. His voice crackled. They wouldn't shut up. They wouldn't stop.
Stop with the audio jump scares.
Then it got even worse. God damn it somehow got worse. Because remember what he'd said? After a while, it wasn't just whispers, but the shapes too. Eventually, I began seeing them. When it first happened, I thought they were some sleep paralysis shit. But even after I got up from bed, they'd still be there in the corners of my room, only vanishing when I got too close. They were more solid in darkness, but they still appeared in the light. He chuckled to himself, almost maniacally. It was only then that I noticed his eyes, almost completely blood red. They were strikingly vivid, like those of a starved beast. They couldn't have been like that just a moment ago. What does he mean, like those of a starved beast? Anyway, let's not think about the implications of that line. They couldn't have been like that just a moment ago. It made my tail stiff as a bone. Outside, the gray clouds swung in abstract... What the fuck? What is this imagery? Outside, the gray clouds swung in abstract sovereignty above our heads, making the whole apartment feel oppressive. Alex's attention turned to the corner of the living room, and my eyes followed. I felt a tug in my heart. I was certain I would see something this time, like one of those stretched-out shapes, chanting their impossible whispers. Maybe I'd see Diego's ghost, laughing as he convulsed and woofed against the wall. Maybe there was nothing. I saw the corner just as it had always been that entire afternoon. This has been the entire afternoon. Okay, so the story started in the middle of the night, then we woke up in the morning. Now this has been spanning across the entire afternoon as he's been telling the story. I suppose that makes sense. I saw the corner just as it always had been that entire afternoon, empty and ordinary. And yet the bear was shaking. Eyes bulged out, panting deep as his claws scratched the tabletop. Now what's happening? Cool art, though. He looks cool. Don't he look cool? He's in intense pain and stress, but don't he look cool? I see you. You need to get out. You need to get out now.
He snapped and turned his attention back to me.
I tell him, but he won't obey. He won't ever do that. I'm not his master, and I never was.
I was getting scared myself. Who, Alex? He laughed. The answer was supposed to be obvious.
Can't you see him? He's right there. He's right there.
All under control. Another pause. I like the chromatic aberration. But I still couldn't see anything. He didn't care regardless. He just kept pointing like a kid pointing at the sky on a Christmas night, singing the airplane lights and yapping at their parents. There, Daddy, I think I saw Santa. Thank you for that. Thank you for that line of text, Mr. Authorson. The bear growled.
Look, again.
Why does he have a bullet in his skull? No one put a bullet in his skull. Why does he have a bullet in his skull? And this is absurd. Why does he have human lips on his body? What are the implications of that? What are the implications of him having human lips on his body? What does that mean? Why are there human lips? That doesn't make any sense. What does that imply about the setting? I turned to the corner. Suddenly, there was a chill over my body. Something could have been there, but I still had no idea what. Alex started chuckling.
It's Thomas,
he said, fingers stretched to a static point in the blank wall.
He's in the corner right now. I feel he's always somewhere nowadays. Sometimes just as a shadow, sometimes as a weird bending of the light. But this time, it's him all the way. His smile widened, the panic on his expressions replaced with cynical, disturbing levity. I'm getting used to his presence, but I wish he would just leave. His eye sockets are still bleeding, and that's going to stain the floor.
Human lips? How? I left shortly afterwards. Alex didn't seem like he wanted to talk anymore, and to be honest, he just looked relieved when I said I needed to go. Then, as I stepped into the hallway to wait for the elevator, I reminded him I wanted to hear Thomas's audio from the day before he went to his apartment. Why would you do that? It was like it all came crashing down the moment I did so. This is why superstitious people exist, right? This is why superstitious people exist. Because a normal, logical, coherent person would put themselves in this situation, cluelessly expose themselves to this curse, and then, die a horrible, painful death, right? But a superstitious person would be like, yeah, ghosts and weird eldritch magic and stuff isn't real, but this shit sounds fucked up, so I'm leaving, right? That's why superstitious people exist. The bear slowly retreated.
Are you serious? After everything I've told you?
You said you'd send me it if I asked.
I guess I did, but...
Hey, I know this was all too much, I said, still trying to sound compassionate. He rubbed his temples and shook his head in slight astonishment as his right ear twitched to the side. For a moment, it faced the empty corner. Yes, it was empty. It always was. I remember thinking to myself how the whole thing sounded in retrospect. Is Tiago willing to subject himself to the audio? Is Tiago willing to subject himself to the audio because he himself has a desire to be in control, right? He himself has a desire to be in control, despite the absolute maniacal, lunatic, absurd stuff Alex has recounted to him. Tiago still wants to reaffirm to himself that there is no weird supernatural business going on and that he is in complete control and understanding of the world and his own life. So that's why he's willing to subject himself to the audio. 1 second. All right, just a little bit more. Chapter 2 will probably be over soon, I mean. I remember thinking to myself how the whole thing sounded in retrospect. How it was just too grim, too fantastical to be true. How his narration even tricked my mind into conjuring those bizarre whispers for a moment as well. He only wanted to scare me, and that's what he did. Oh no, Tiago. Cool story, man. The folks... Shut the fuck up. Tiago sucks. Tiago sucks. Tiago keeping up the trend of how furry visual novel protagonists somehow managed to be the most, insufferable fucks in the universe. Cool story, man. The folks at r/no sleep would have a blast. I wasn't mad at them at all. I was actually more impressed than upset at the possibility of it all being a prank. I wanted to see how far this went, and Thomas's voice recording was just what I needed to close it off. Besides, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious about those whispers. They would just bug me forever. I was beginning to think he would just flat out deny anything about that audio. But then he quickly fished his phone out of his pocket. And a moment later, I got the notification on mine. Oh. The bear walked forward, towering over me. His smile was gone, and with all the traces of anxiety. And with it all traces of anxiety as well. His glare were enough to hold me in place. You asked for it, I sent it. I don't know if you believed everything I told you. But if you do just a little bit, I hope you know better than to press play. I was going to say this was your only warning, but if you already made up your mind, just go ahead and listen to it. So many different expressions, so many different models for Alex. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool how much they vary. Alex turned back to his apartment. Safe travels. Thanks. Actually, you know what? Tiago isn't insufferable. He's just kind of stupid. He's just a little stupid. I timidly murmured as I entered the elevator. By the way, I still wanted to ask, why did you keep the audio saved in your phone? I thought it was obvious. He said, leaning slightly to the door frame. They wouldn't let me get rid of it. He wouldn't let me. He shut the door without looking at me. God bless Tiago. I walked out of the building and into my ride back home in complete silence. Parts of his tale played in my head. I felt like an idiot for believing them to be more than a silly ghost story. Guess he was just that good of a storyteller. I would have loved having asked him to narrate other tales to me in his spare time. Okay, so it's weird. So whenever Diego died, I don't know, it's weird because like whenever Diego died, he like passed the curse off into Thomas, and Thomas presumably passed the curse on to Alex. But it seems that like Alex doesn't have the same like dominion. It doesn't seem that Alex has like the same dominion, the same power over the curse, over the control that Thomas or Diego did. Right, because presumably if Alex had like properly inherited what, Thomas had inherited from Diego, he would have did whatever fucking spooky incantation bullshit to instill, the sight, if you will, into Tiago just in that moment. But maybe the conditions weren't met. Maybe it requires more conditions for that to like properly happen. I don't know. Obviously, that's not something Alex, as a character, would want to do, but, the story is explicitly about characters doing things they don't want to do, right? So it seems like whatever, compulsion is possessing these characters would have compulsed Alex to compulse the compulsion onto Tiago there. And I guess in a subtle way, he kind of did, but not in like the explicit way that it happened with Diego and Thomas and Alex. I don't have anything else to say about that. It's just, but that never happened. What were we talking about? I went on a tangent. Would have loved having asked him to narrate other tales to me in his spare time. That never happened. As I later found out, he wouldn't live past that night. What the heck? Of what came after. Okay. Part 2's over. Right? We'll close the story. So is that the last time we see Alex? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Anyway, that's